Right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Committee of Adjustments. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variances and consent held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the proposal that is before us, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the committee, after consultation with the Secretary Treasurer, will set a new hearing date. No further notice will be provided unless there are changes to the application. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we have adopted the following process. The owner or authorized agent will be given the opportunity, if so desired, to briefly explain to us the basis of the application, answer questions that may arise after the hearing. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for this presentation. You need to state for your name and address for the record. Any materials submitted to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes allocated will be at the discretion of the committee. All persons attending the hearing who wish to support or oppose the application may also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make that presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chairperson of the committee. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will also be at the discretion of the committee. If there are several speakers sharing the same view, we are happy to hear all the interested parties. However, selecting a spokesperson to represent the group's opinion will better serve the process. We'd love to hear the views of everyone. However, covering the same points will not advance your case. The owner and agent will be provided with 5 minutes to respond to comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the owner or agent has any concerns found in the staff reports, particularly with respect to the proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all discussion. Once the committee makes an oral decision, any person desiring a copy must file this with the Secretary Treasurer at this meeting, a written request for notice of the decision. A green sheet is provided for this purpose at the back of the room. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Municipal Board for the giving of any subsequent notice of any appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 for consent applications. If the applicant, owner, or agent, or any other person who has filed a written request for such a notice, if you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Municipal Board, and the latest date to appeal to the decision to the Ontario Municipal Board will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will notify the applicant through written correspondence. People attending the committee meeting are to be courteous and respectful of the members of the committee, the town staff, as well as the people in the attendance tonight. Tonight's meeting will be live streamed and available for future viewing on town's live stream page at oakville.ca/live. We do ask that you maintain your cellular phones or pagers on silent because they do interfere with the audio system. Thank you. There are no regrets this evening. Do we have any requests of a declaration of any pecuniary interests? I see none. Are there any requests for deferral or withdrawal of applications at this time? Mr. Barrett.
Good evening, everyone. Graham Barrett, agent for the owners of 1372 Acton Crescent. I'd like to request a deferral to address some planning comments and come back as soon as possible.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Barrett. Who is here for application CAV 055 of 2018 at 1372 Acton Crescent? Okay, so there's no one here in either way. Members of the committee, Mr. Barrett is going to take this up with town staff and come back to us. Any objections or questions of Mr. Barrett at this time? We see none. Motion for deferral. Mr. Hardcastle, thank you. All those in support? Okay, your application has been deferred. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Oh, you are aware of the deferral fee, and you will see the Secretary Treasurer when you are ready to get a new date. Thank you. Good night. Anyone else seeking to ask for a deferral or withdrawal of application at this time? I see none. Thank you. We'll proceed with the first application on our agenda this evening, CAV 051 of 2018 at 1570 Venetia Drive.
Good evening, Mr. Chairperson. Members of the committee, Joel Tanner with Simple Design Studio, authorized representative for the client.
Good evening, sir. As you are quite aware, there are procedural bylaws allows for us to forgo with the presentation if we've done our site visits and are familiar with the application. Members, do you have any questions of the applicant at this time? You see none. If you have nothing further to add or you'd like to say on record for your application, we are prepared to take the application into. Is there anyone here for application CAV 051 of 2018 at 1570 Venetia Drive? I see none. Okay. So where's the thing? Back to where we were.
Yeah, nothing further this time.
Okay, thank you. This is an application for a new story, new two-story detached dwelling. Who's prepared to move a motion? Mr. Charlebois? I have to turn my on, I think.
Green needs on or not?
No, red needs on.
There we go, thank you. Madam Chair, thank you. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, noting that the town is in support and further noting that there were no written or oral objections or support from the public, I find that this particular application does meet the four tests under the Planning Act. I'm going to make a recommendation that it be approved, subject to the condition that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated February 27, 2018, and subject further to the condition that this approval expires in 2 years from the date of this decision if the building permit is not issued.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved.
Thanks so much, committee.
Okay, application CAV 052 of 2018 at 58 Normandy Place. Good evening, sir.
Evening, Madam Chair. David Nelson, Planning Consultant, 382 Bartos Drive, Oakville, Ontario.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Who is here for application CAV 052 of 2018 at 58 Normandy Place? You in support or in opposition?
Support.
Okay, you're the applicant? Okay. And you're in opposition. We do have one letter of objection on record. Mr. Nelson, perhaps take us through the presentation and we'll try and get the information that is required for the member in the audience who is in opposition.
Madam Chair, a context map. The subject property, the end of my pen. This is a development that was constructed in the middle 1980s. I was on staff here at the time, the town of Oakville. This was a project that was developed by the Rotary Club West and consists of a number of different built forms, from semi-detached townhouses and a four-story apartment building. You can just see the corner of the apartment building at the top end of the screen. The applicant has constructed a replacement deck Sorry for the quality of the picture, very dark. A replacement deck or balcony, as it should be referenced, being on the second floor of the building. This is essentially the same size as the previously existing balcony on the property. It has been pulled in on each of the sides to ensure that there is no encroachment through the common lot lines in the subject building. I have reviewed the staff report, Madam Chair, and I agreed with the staff position that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Ma'am, would you like to address the committee and voice your opposition? Your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Agnes Stassen, 64 Normandy Place. And I had delivered a letter of objection to the town, which unfortunately I don't have in front of me. But
We have it on record.
the balcony is about 3 times as large as the bylaw states. Also, it's got solid walls, which do not allow the light or the air to come through. And the previous balcony did not have solid walls like this one does. And if you look at it, the picture is very dark, so you couldn't see it, but really is an eyesore in the community, and it degrades the area.
Are there any questions of Ms. Hanson at this time?
I don't know. Oh, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering, obviously you were there before when the old balcony was there?
I've been there for 15 years, however, I have to honestly say, I don't know what the old balcony looked like, except it did not have walls.
Okay, ma'am, are you going to address the committee as well?
Pardon me?
Are you going to address the committee
Yes.
and voice your concern? I will give you a chance once Ms. Stanton has done so. Thank you.
According to my recollection, the old balcony did not have solid walls because when I looked at my window before, I could see light. Now all I can see is wood.
Okay. So you don't recall much about it?
No.
Okay. Is your objection, just to be clear though, is your objection then more the walls than the balcony itself? Because the application seems to infer here that it's 0.3 of a meter bigger.
I could put up with the size of the balcony, but the walls is definitely,
What's bothering you the most?
because it blocks the sunlight, blocks the air coming through, it blocks the view of the park. So it's the walls that are my main objection.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? See none. Thank you. Can you please state your name and address for the record at the microphone so we can hear you? At the microphone so we can hear you.
Madeleine Kokik, and if you look at the back of the townhouses, I'm on the left.
Sorry. Ms. Kohik, can you provide your address, please?
16 Normandy Place.
16 as in 16?
No, 60.
60 Normandy Place. Thank you. If you'd be kind enough to speak into the microphone, thank you.
There was no balcony there before. What it was a wooden lattice, but there was no balcony there before. There's still some townhouses with that. Not all townhouses have balconies. So it was just a wooden fence as wide as the door was. But why I'm actually here is, if you look at this one, you see this is my balcony here, and there is a piece of wood that's nailed down to my side, and I'm wondering why that would be allowed. This one here.
We will get you some information on that. Is there anything else?
Well, I'm just here in support of the people on the right side, the ones that their balcony is recessed. So if I put this here, you can see the wall here, they're recessed, this townhouse. Plus this is jutting out, and they used to be able to sit here and see the trees and the park, and they can't see that anymore.
Okay, thank you for your submission,
Yeah,
ma'am.
they have to leave your drawing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson. So, if you'd be kind enough to answer the questions of the neighbor who's wondering about the aesthetics, I guess, of the wood that's on her property line, and if you can
Yes,
ascertain
Madam
that.
Yes, Madam Chair. The rationale for that solid fencing, I'll call it for want of a better expression, is privacy. My applicant has indicated to me that he feels that there's exposure from the apartment building that he is trying to avoid.
No, I understand that it is a privacy screening, but the neighbor seems to allude to the fact that it's on her property line or on her property wall. Is that, are you,
No, I'm not aware of that, Madam Chair. I understood from the owner of the property that he had set the balcony back deliberately on either side to ensure that he was not crossing the common lot line.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I would have to defer to the landowner as to the purpose of that strip of wood that's shown on the drawing. Perhaps I could ask him to come up to the podium and answer that question.
Certainly.
Good evening.
Just your name and address for the record. It has to be on record.
Matt Swain, 58 Normandy Place. Thanks. So the privacy screen is on the west side. You're looking on the west side, so backing onto the parking lot. That's fascia, so the actual deck itself is approximately 12 inches in from the neighbor on the further west side. So in terms of her point, I do agree that it looks to be a few inches on the brick on her fascia. That's simply just a piece of wood that could be shortened or removed. I think that was because of the way the inset is on the deck away from the wall, that it was just put there to close the gap.
Okay. So we'll leave it to you to rectify that, because I'm sure that's through I'm losing my
Building permit?
Thank you, the permit, yes. The inspection will tell you that if you are across boundaries, that you will have to take care of it, so.
Okay.
Are there any questions of Mr. Swain at this time?
Sir, I would like to...
I still have one more.
Ma'am, you've had your chance to speak, and we've heard what you had to say. Now it's the applicant's turn to respond, and then we will take this matter into committee. This is how our procedure is. If you have any further questions, perhaps at the end, you can talk to each other outside once we've taken the matter into committee and made our decision. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Sherman.
No, that's all right. What I was going to say is, when we come to a meeting like this, we're trying to take everybody's considerations into play. So it sounds to me like the biggest consideration is less about your balcony and more about the screening, which is basically impervious. Having listened to all of this here, or would you consider maybe opening up that screening a little bit?
That's a good point. I mean, looking at from this direction, the neighbor has some concern, which I understand, and I think the height of it on the west side, from this picture here, on the smaller balcony to the left, if you look at that, I'd be, happy to reduce that by, a foot or so to make it more encompassing with the rest of the, just the fencing there, whatever it's called.
The railing?
The railing, pardon me. On the other side, my really only issue is in terms of how, that screen there looks out, so this area here looks out directly into the parking lot, like into the back residences, apartment buildings. And so it's a seniors building, and oftentimes they have different hours, and there's a number of units, and so quite often, lines are open and so on. So it's just a matter of us protecting our privacy and they protecting their privacy. So the thought was to have the screen on that side a little bit higher. The neighbor on the east side, his name is Matthew, he's just moved in and said, I love what you've done, I'd like to build a similar structure. We'll certainly encourage him to go through the process. But we'd like to try to keep that side as a privacy between ourselves and the apartment. I'm willing to work with the neighbor on the other side to reduce it if that makes, if that's some equity to the situation.
Thank you for that. I'm going to actually just direct a question to planning is, are there any restrictions at all? Do you have to know about how high a fence you can have around a balcony, or how high a privacy thing can be, and what it's all about? And it's okay if the answer is no.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee, the zoning bylaw does not regulate for screening on balconies. Therefore, the screen that's been proposed here was not captured as a variance item with respect to what's been proposed. The nature of that screen, whether it's wood or glass or a combination thereof, is strictly architectural, and it's really up to the applicant at that point as to how they would want to put that in. Should the committee wish to provide for certain conditions around the architectural detailing of the balcony, I believe that's still within your authority to do so, as the variance has to deal with the depth of the balcony, and if screening or a certain style of screening would be more appropriate, then that's your authority to impose such conditions.
Are there any other questions at this time? Mr. Hardcastle?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Swain, just in terms of clarification, you were speaking of your neighbor that you said was satisfied with this and was looking at doing something similar. Is that his deck that we're seeing right here?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I see none. Mr. Swain, if you have nothing further to add, we're prepared to take this matter into committee.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Members are in your hands.
Is this my turn now? No?
Sorry?
I was going to say the apartment building, actually the big one, is that they're facing that apartment building. The apartment building that they're trying to create privacy is further down that one.
We're aware, ma'am. We've done our site visits. We're aware of the location. We're aware of all these details, and we appreciate your submission. At this time, we're ready to make a decision about the application. But if you have any further clarification, I encourage you to speak to Mr. Swain outside once we are done. Thank you. Mr. Tadowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, it's always gratifying to see a healthy exchange between the community and the applicant. And what I've heard here tonight is concern from the community about the height of the privacy screen on the west side of the building. And I think the fact that the variance is extending the width of the deck is contributing to that, as that privacy screen extends further out into the yards. So, Madam Chair, I think, and we've heard the applicant willing to make some amendments to satisfy his neighbors. So With that, Madam Chair, I'm going to move that the application be approved as applied for and make it subject to two conditions. One, that the applicant provide the Secretary Treasurer with revised drawings that reduces the privacy screen on the west side of the deck to railing height. And second condition would be that a building permit issue within 2 years. And with those conditions, Madam Chair, I believe that this application satisfies the test of the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Utilowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved with those conditions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. The next application is CAV 054 of 2018 at 486 Patricia Drive.
Good evening, Madam Chair,
Good evening, Mr.
members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. I am the agent for the applicant, and my office is located at 100 Bronte Road, Unit 10 in Oakville.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Is there anyone here for application CAV 054 of 2018 at 486 Patricia Drive? Hello. Are you here in opposition or in support, or just to get information? Just the information. Mr. Kieran will take us through the presentation, and I'll give you an opportunity to address the committee. Yes, I saw your hand. I am speaking to all of you.
So the application is for a single-family dwelling, and this is the site plan. I'm just trying to figure out the zoom on this new system here. Yeah, and that's right. Okay, thanks. So it's a single-family dwelling. It's what I call a story and a half. The proposed new footprint complies with all the setbacks and is actually a little bit, allowing for a little bit more than the minimum required side yard setbacks. As you can see, the driveway's also been, shaped to accommodate the existing trees that are there. So all the trees at the front are going to be retained. The minor variance being sought is for residential floor area, and just put up a front elevation of the proposed dwelling. So it's what I call, as I mentioned, a story and a half, where we've sort of brought down the roof lines in order to kind of reduce the massing and introduce some additional sort of character details that help soften the overall look of the proposed dwelling. And the variance being sought is pertaining to gross floor area. It's pretty small. What's allowed is 41%. We're going for 42.3%, and that's mainly to accommodate a little bit of extra space on the second floor. My client wanted a laundry room upstairs, so that was added, and that's the lion's share of the increase. And then we also just increased, I think, the master bedroom by a foot and one other bedroom by another foot, and that's what added up to this request, this variance request.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? See none. We'll give the neighbors a chance. Would you like to address the committee, or have we answered your questions through Mr. Kieran's presentation?
No.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, please come up to the podium and provide your name and address for the record, and I'll try and get you all the information that you'd like.
Sure. My name is Jody Clark. I'm at 490 Patricia Drive. And I just have questions. There's 3 very large trees that have been there for, I don't know, longer than I've been there, probably longer than you guys have been there. Yeah, they actually line all the way down to the lake.
That's fine. Let's address the committee and
So
then
I'm
we'll
just,
get all the questions answered.
I'd like to know what's happening with those trees, because
Okay.
we're having a very large problem in the neighborhood of large homes going in and flooding problems. And the homes that, every home that gets built in the neighborhood is bigger and deeper and wider and longer and higher and whatever. And when they take down these trees, they're ruining the environment, right? You're ruining the drainage, which is happening with people having flooded basements, with ditches that 4 or 5 days after a rainstorm are flooded. And once you take out these roots and you fill it with just dirt, that doesn't take care of the drainage. It ends up getting stuck in the clay and floating, and so that's my question.
You said you had several questions, is that the
No,
only
it's
question?
mostly the trees. I want to know what's going on with the...
Okay, Mr. Kieran
with the
had shown
trees.
us the site map and addressed something about the trees.
You said the trees in the front were
The
standing.
front, so he'll answer your question now. Is that it? Because once you leave the podium,
Yeah,
he'll
no,
have...
I just had a comment about the house, 1.5 stories, is the front looks like it's got like, whatever, the angles in the front, but every other side is full 2-story house. So, however, the terminal, like, that's just a comment, but yeah, I'm worried about the environment and the trees and the drainage and the entire community.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
I'm not exactly sure which trees specifically are being mentioned here. I already covered off the trees on the front. I presume it's these in the back. I see a couple of larger trees that are along the side property line here and a few in the back. So, I mean, we've not gotten to the stage of the permit process yet where we're getting into the specifics of each tree. That, as the committee knows, that is part of the permit process. There'll be a full tree permit required, which will accompany an arborist report, and each tree will be individually kind of assessed. What I can say is that my client intends to keep as many trees as possible. The only tree that I think will definitely need to be removed is the one that's closest to the rear corner of the dwelling, which is this one here, because that's just too close to the proposed excavation. So I would say that one needs to come out, but all the other ones we would make an effort to retain them.
Okay. Mr. Hardcastle, you had a question?
Mr. Kieran, it appears to me that closest tree is off of what is called a covered porch. Are you looking at putting a full foundation? We don't have foundation plans here.
Yeah.
Are you putting a full foundation underneath that covered porch?
Well, there will be a foundation, but it should only be a 4-foot deep foundation, so it's reduced depth.
As opposed to footings?
Yeah, well, it's still a footing, but it's only 4 feet deep, so just for frost, yeah. So there will be reduced excavation there, but, you know, given the proximity of the tree, I think it's still going to be impacted too much. The other thing I was going to mention, as the committee knows, is, you know, when we do get approval for the removal of that tree, we'll be required to replant probably 8 trees to replace that tree, so that's a given, you know.
Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? I see none. If you have nothing further to add, we'll take the matter into committee.
Thank you.
And I will say on record that the town staff is in support of your application, and we have no letters of opposition or support on hand, but we do have one member in the audience who has voiced their concern. Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the proposal, the requested variance is relatively minor, and that there have been significant efforts made through the architectural design through the architectural design of the building to reduce the perceived massing from the street edge. So with respect to the variance itself, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the test of the Act. With respect to the concerns that were expressed by the neighbor regarding the trees, I believe that the said alteration process will allow for and deal with appropriately the protection of the trees, grading and drainage, and make provisions available for the replacement of that tree with additional trees to recoup the lost tree canopy. So on that basis, and acknowledging those comments, I'll put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variance does conform to the 4 tests of the Act, and the motion would be subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated March 5th, 2018 as submitted. Second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved.
Thank you.
The next application is CAV 179 of 2017, deferred from October 24 of 2017 at 55 Belvedere Drive. Is there anyone here who's here in attendance for this application? Okay, I see none. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Bill Oakridge. Address of my business is 2140 Winston Park Drive, Oakville.
Good evening, Mr. Oakridge. This is a deferred application. Staff is in support of the amended application. Are there any questions of Mr. Oakridge at this time? Mr. Hardcastle?
Just if you could quickly just run through where we were at the last go-around and where we are here today, just to highlight for the committee.
I'm sure I'd be happy to. The proposal was larger. Can't recall exactly what the coverage was because I didn't bring my full file, but I seem to recall that we had a not only a coverage variance, I believe there was a side yard setback variance as well. And I apologize, Mr. Hardcastle, because I didn't bring my full file with what the previous variances were. But we've reduced the coverage down to, oh sorry, here it is, I apologize. We had a residential floor area variance as well, which is now being eliminated. And our coverage that we applied for previously was 30.95%. We're now 26.99%, or 2% over the required coverage.
I'm just waiting for it to kick in. Okay, any other questions of Mr. Oakridge? Okay, I see none. If you have nothing further to add, we can take this matter into committee. So the conditions on Mr. Yep.
So I have phone 6 these days. Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the application here from the applicant as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that it is in support from the previous application that was submitted. I also note too that there were no letters of support or objection from the public, as well as no one here to comment. I find that I appreciate the efforts that your client has taken in working with the town to bring these variations more back in line. And I find that this particular variation does meet the 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm going to make a recommendation that it be approved, subject to the condition of the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated February 16, 2018 as submitted, and subject further to the condition that this approval is harder than 2 years if the building permit is not issued.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. You're familiar with those conditions?
Yes.
All those in, any discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, your application has been approved, thank you.
Thank you. These are Mr. Kieran's car keys.
Oh, I'm sure he'll come back, he won't go far.
He has another item on the agenda.
It might be up the hall.
Yeah.
So the next application is CAV 185 of 2017, deferred from November 7th of 2017 at 274 William Street.
Right here.
It's Mr. Bea.
Oh, hi. Who is here for this application?
There's water there.
No, I know you are, I'm asking the audience to see, just trying to give you some time. Okay. So there's no one here. I'll note on record that there are 8 letters of support from the neighbors that have been submitted, and that the town staff is in support of the new amended application.
Good evening, Madam Chair
Good evening.
and members of the committee. My name is Emily Vea, and I'm from John Wilmot Architects Office, representing our client, the homeowner.
Thank you, Ms. Bay. Do you have anything further to add to the application? Perhaps would you like to go through the changes since it was last deferred? I was asking them. They're just not in. Yes? They're good? Mr. Hardcastle? 2 to 1. We're good. If you have nothing further to add.
Just quickly, actually,
Go
to
ahead.
go through the history.
Go ahead.
Since the deferral, we had worked with the Heritage staff member, and that was just to simplify the details on the exterior and to bring down the roof line of the addition. The minor variances have remained the same, intact, and we noted that the planning staff supports our application, and again, I heard you say that we have 8 letters of support.
Are there any questions of Ms. Vea at this time? I see none. If you're satisfied, we can take the matter into committee.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Talowski?
There we go. Madam Chair, I'll be pleased to move approval of this application. I find the majority of the variances are largely due to the existing dwelling on the site, and that the orientation of the dwelling is such that the additional size that's being requested will have no impact. Note again that they've had letters of support from the community as well as support from planning staff and the heritage planner. With that, Madam Chair, I believe the application meets the test of the Planning Act, would make the approval conditional on development proceeding in general accordance with the drawings provided, and then a building permit issue within 2 years.
Thank you. The condition on the record is to the satisfaction of the, okay.
Yeah, change it to that.
Okay, so it's fine as it is. You're familiar with the condition as it was stipulated in the staff's report, that constructed in general accordance with the final approved heritage. Oh, never mind. I have to get used to that.
The proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with the final approved heritage permit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning.
Yes.
In addition to the second condition that Mr. Plasky put on record.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Your application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next application on record is CAV 032 of 2018, deferred from February 27th of 2018 at 472 Patricia Drive. Who is here in the audience attending for this application, CAV 032-2018 at 472 Patricia Drive? Okay. You're in support or in opposition, or looking for information? Clarification, very well. And you're in for opposition. Okay, we'll start with the presentation. Mr. Natajan?
Yes, thank you.
Can you name and address on the record, and you can start with a presentation, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Rick Meteljan. My address is 79 Wilson Street, Suite 301, Oakville, Ontario. I appear on behalf of the clients, and or my clients who are the property owners. As a committee will be aware, this was before the committee, I guess about a month and a half or so ago. It was before the committee at that time requesting 4 variances. The variances were in respect of the garage area, the projection of the garage, the residential floor area, and in respect of a proposed balcony on the second floor rear of the house. At that time, planning staff were in support of the first two variances, the one for garage area and the one for the garage projection. They were not in support of the other 2 variances, and the members of the community were here, and they had some concerns about the proposal as well. What has changed between then and now is that we've taken the 4th variance, which is the one for the balcony at the rear, and we have eliminated that feature. So that's no longer something that we're before the committee for. There was concern in respect to the previous design, notwithstanding the fact that we met the side yard setbacks and so on. There was concern in respect to the previous design about the nature, the detailing and the massing and so on along the west side of the building, which is this one at the lower part of the drawing here. That did present itself as basically a wall, a 2-story wall that was something that the community had some concern about, and the staff had concern about. And there was also concern about the gross floor area number that we were proposing at the time, which was something in the range of 45% as opposed to a maximum of 41% for this zone. So we went back, we did some redesign of the building. We created, as opposed to that sort of wall, that flat wall, we created what we have now, which, as you can see, is something which is more sculptural, really in nature. We brought down the soffit on that side, and we reduced the setback for the majority of the length of the elevation. We, by doing that, and with making some other changes to the home, we brought the back wall in a couple of feet. And the net effect of that was that we were able to reduce the gross floor area such that the request that we're before you now with is for 42.7% as opposed to a maximum of 41. We think that the changes are positive. We respect the comments that were made by the community and so on, and we tried to work with them. The other thing that we did in terms of the house design, there was concern in respect of the community from the standpoint of the trees on the property. That, as you can see by the site plan, which I'll just move here a little bit. As you can see by the site plan, the lot is heavily treed, especially across the rear of the site. And we, at the last set of drawings that the committee saw, we were showing a pool, and we were showing there was some question as to the proximity, notwithstanding the fact that we had no issue with the rear yard setback. There was some question about the proximity of the house to the rear yard and how the pool was going to work and so on. So we actually had the opportunity, we had the potential to bring the house forward. We, at the time that the committee saw it last, we had more front yard setback than we required. So we decided that what we would do is we'd pull a house forward about a meter. We're actually still, we still have potentially more to bring forward. But we brought the house forward a meter, and with the combination of that and bringing the back wall in a couple of feet and making the pool smaller, or the potential pool smaller, we've been able to increase the setback at the rear. We've been able to keep the building away from the trees, and keep the pool away from the trees. So we think that from the standpoint of the preservation of the natural features and so on the site, that we've made a benefit there. So those are the changes that we've made. We think that they're positive. I'd be happy to show the committee the elevations to someone if they want me to go through them. But we ask for your support. And I'd be happy to stand down while the members of the community speak if they would choose to.
Thank you, Mr. Matajan. Are there any questions, Mr. Matajan, at this time? I see none. Okay. We'll invite the members of the audience to address the committee, and then we'll let you respond to that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So who would like to come up first? So name and address for the
My
record,
name is
please.
Anne Wotton, Anne with an E, W-O-O-T-T-O-N. I am 482 Patricia Drive, 2 doors down. As he said, this place is heavily treed. The trees are very old, very big. They have a lot of wildlife in them. They give a lot of shade. Now, are you saying that you are keeping all the trees at the back there?
Go ahead, at the back, yes, correct.
Yes.
But there's still a lot of trees down the side. A lot of cedar, very tall cedar hedges. And this is our main concern, because we are losing trees at an alarming rate in this area. It's just incredible.
Well, as you heard with the previous applications, anything that has to do with trees will happen through site plan process.
Understand.
And they'll be required to submit an arborist report for anything that they need to remove. Everything that is existent will be hoarded off to protect. There is a process and a procedure for that.
Okay.
This committee does not govern that process.
No, that's what I
But we
figured.
appreciate your
we
opinion and your...
needs to be said. That's
Yes,
that's
and
what
it-
needs to
and
be
it
said.
is-
And that's fine. If he's going to keep the trees at the back, I'm happy with that. I'd like to see the ones at the side kept too, but
Yeah,
okay.
your opinions and your concerns are voiced, they are on record. That's as much as we can do.
Okay.
If there's nothing else, I can, okay, then I'll invite someone else to speak.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
My name is Gordon Hybrandt. I'm at 479 Rebecca Street. So I am behind, on Rebecca, so I'm behind Patricia, and I'm one house to the west.
Okay,
So I don't directly back onto the property.
that's fine, you're still within the radius of...
Correct.
Yes.
But I also wanted to speak to the trees, just to get a little bit of clarity. Now, you indicated that you're not likely to give the kind of clarity that I'm looking for, but I just want to go on the record to state my concerns in the process. So what we're talking about, of course, is this cluster of trees along the back. And I will speak, I'll read part of the minor variance report, the part that has the department agency comments received. I just want to quote this report specific to this issue. So this would be the second paragraph on the second page, and it would be towards the bottom of that paragraph. It says, however, a number of trees are proposed to be removed from the property, and best efforts should be made to protect the existing vegetation. Additionally, the proposed pool has also been relocated as to not impact the existing trees along the rear lot line. And that's really what I'm speaking to, is the trees at the rear lot line. So I guess one question I would have for the applicant, if he can speak to it, is that rectangle that represents the future pool, does that rectangle represent the hole in the ground, or is it representative of all of the patio that would surround the pool? So that's relevant to how close the excavation would be to the root system of the trees. I'm not sure how accurate these arcs are with respect to canopies, but if they are accurate,
presumably the root system would extend at least to the canopy, if not beyond the canopy. So any excavation could put some of those trees in jeopardy. I'm not an arborist, I can't speak to it, but that would be my concern. And I would expect that the process in place for the tree permit, the approval of everything, would take that into consideration.
I believe so, Mr. Hybern, but we'll let Mr. Metalgen address all your concerns. If there's nothing else, would you like to add anything else?
Just one other thing about that process. My understanding is that the applicant hires an arborist and that the town has their own arborist.
Yes.
And that there is a meeting of the minds. So I would expect that certainly the town arborist would take all of this into consideration in granting the permit.
Yes.
And so the other question would be, is the arborist on site during excavation? Because it's great to say that this is the best practice and this is how it should play out, but if there's not someone there to witness the excavation, who knows how far back into the root system they can actually go.
I don't know that answer to that question, but perhaps Ms. Mahavich has a comment with that respect.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the committee to respond to the residents' questions. While I'm not in our development engineering group and I'm not an arborist, my understanding of the process is that an arborist report is required for the construction of the dwelling as well as a future pool. It doesn't have to be at the same time, it could be separately. And depending on the findings of that arborist report and what construction techniques would be implemented to preserve or protect root systems, then the arborist may be on site during that process. So for instance, if there is expected to be some hydrovacking done to protect the root system or expose roots where there might be certain footings or foundations being placed, then those arborists will be required to be on site to supervise that process. Until that arborist report has been completed and it's understood which trees are going to be impacted by the proposal, that would dictate then who and what happens on the property with respect to tree protection.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Okay, thank you. So again, if the applicant could just speak to the footprint that we see of the pool as to what it represents.
Perfect, we'll get him to do that. Ma'am, I believe you still have another chance. Oh, okay.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Anna Nokon. I reside at 476 Patricia Drive. My property borders the western side of this building proposal. And I would like to address 2 points here. In your report, it states, it results in a dwelling that maintains the character of the neighborhood and preserves the heritage attributes on the property. If you look at the design, this is a very modern design, which is in stark contrast to the buildings, both to new buildings and the current buildings that are in that area.
Maybe you can just step back just a little. We can hear you fine. It's such a small room.
And it detracts visually from the neighborhood. And it doesn't preserve the heritage character.
Okay.
And my other point is, it says here that there will be no negative impacts to abutting properties. My point, or my concern is, there is a very mature hedge that borders the western side of the property. These are swamp cedars. And in order for the excavation to proceed, that hedge will have to be removed, and it will alter the drainage patterns on my property. And that property is known to have issues with drainage, which are longstanding in nature. And given the depth of the excavation, there is potential for flooding. Okay, I know, those are my 2 points.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of Ms. Nokan at this time? No, I see none. Okay, ma'am, you're the last one to speak.
I'll just be quick and I can be repetitive. My issue again is the trees.
Okay.
You've heard that there's drainage
I'm
issues.
sorry, you have to state your name and address for the record again.
Again?
Yes.
Um,
It is the procedure.
It's all right. Okay, I'm a different person this time. Jody Clark, 490 Patricia Drive.
It used to be that we weren't videotaped and things were not available and people can tell that you're the same person. So it was all recorded and that's why the procedure states that you have to state your name and record. So that no one knows who it is just from what do they call it?
Minutes?
Yeah, the minutes of the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll just, I'll support everything that everybody else has said, is the trees are a big issue. There is already a lot of flooding in the neighborhood, and it's, fortunately my house hasn't flooded, but I know a lot of them across the street. I know there's a builder across the street that has had to put his building on pause because of the flooding, because he went too deep. There used to be a stream in the neighborhood. And taking away these trees is like...
So is there any other points that you have other than the tree?
Well, again, supporting, this is the box of a house. It's not a nice, like, we live in a community where it was all built by Ford employees and it was all very small, angular, tree canopied homes. And these homes, some of the ones that are being built that are flat roof and straight down the sides are not keeping with the values and what
So
you guys have said.
your objection is primarily with as well the design and
Yeah,
the
and
character
then
of the
voicing my
neighborhood.
concern with the trees, like, these houses are 3 doors apart, right? And you're taking away a lot of trees.
All right. Thank you for your submission. Perhaps we'll have Ms. Malovich comment on the report and the character of the neighborhood.
Just give it a second. There.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to the committee, I'd like to just clarify and point out in the staff report, unfortunately this got missed. This is not a heritage character district. There is no heritage attributes with respect to this particular neighborhood. However, there is a character as it was described in our report, which contains both 1- and 2-story dwellings. The proposal with respect to the design still emulates a massing that can be found in the neighborhood. While we appreciate that the design is more modern or contemporary in style compared to some of the newer dwellings or the existing dwellings, the architectural nature of the dwelling is not something that the municipality has control over. What we look at is the massing and the scale of the structure with respect to the overall neighborhood character. And it has been our position and our comment that we feel that the application as is presented to you this evening does reflect those elements. With respect again to trees, as it's been stated, there is a process for tree removal through the private tree bylaw. Whether or not someone was redeveloping their property, every property owner has the opportunity to remove trees on their property through that process. And it just so happens that through development, there is an extra layer of review where we will consider applications that do have a much more heavier impact on trees. So through that, should the committee find this application this evening, the applicant will proceed down that road and obtain a site alteration permit where it will be assessed through the private tree bylaw, and those assessments will follow those processes in the normal manner.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Mialovic. I'm sorry, ma'am, the procedure is that you have your time at the podium, you ask your questions, we redirect them to the interested parties or the appropriate parties to respond to them, and then the matter goes into committee for a decision. So the time for rebuttal has ended. Mr. Metaljan, you still have to respond to one of the questions that were posed by one of the neighbors with respect to the footprint of the pool and as to where it extends. Perhaps you can just shed some light on that to give him some information, and then the rest of the information they'll have to get through the process of the arborists and so forth.
Thank you. Okay, so you would like me to respond to the issue of the pool location? Would you like me to respond to any of the other tree or
Yes.
design issues or
Feel
anything?
free. This
Okay.
is your time to respond to all the concerns of the neighbors. So
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, in regard to the pool and the issue of the pool size and so on, as I indicated on the drawing, we're calling that a future pool. There's no there's no desire at the present time to make an application for a pool. If in fact that happens, that will happen at some later date. There of course there will be a different permit process. There's a whole issue with pool fencing and so on and so forth. There will at that time be likely another arborist report, another site alteration permit. The only reason for showing that pool there is to give a sense of where you could put a pool if you chose to put one, and what a reasonable sized pool would be. The size of the pool that's shown there is 12 feet by 24 feet, which is a reasonable to even large size pool. In answer to the question from the community, that's showing the actual pool. That's showing the actual dug part of the pool. So there would be some kind of landscaping or some kind of terrace or something around it. How large that would be a matter for some future person to design if and when that pool happens. The idea of the drawing is just to show that if you wanted to put a pool, that's where it could go, and that's a sort of reasonable size. But I come back to putting a pool in will not be part of the application that we make going forward. In regard to the tree issue, I think the comments that were made by the staff member are in fact very correct. The committee is correct that there is a whole process that goes along with the removal of the trees, the arborist report, the protection of the trees that are going to be protected. And there will, as the committee has noted, there will be a requirement to plant replacement trees on the site. So in terms of the loss of trees, yes, there will be loss of mature trees, but there will also be a regeneration of newer trees, which is in itself something which is of long-term benefit to the community. In regard to the architectural design of the house, I realize that it is more contemporary than the rest of the houses, or the majority of the houses in the community. I realize that it will look different. I think that the comments that were made by staff, that when you look at a building, you have to look at the overall massing of it. You have to sort of look back and squint and see if it looks right, as opposed to looking at the particular details. But I think also it's a very, very important concept that in a community, new houses and new buildings have to be of their own time and place, and that the idea of simply replicating and replicating and replicating isn't something which is necessarily positive. And when you go to any of the great cities of the world, and when you walk down old streets, what you see is a layering of history and a layering of buildings, and you see the old and you see the not so old and you see the new, and this is what gives communities in a greater sense their life and their interest. And so I think that having a layering of buildings types and a layering of building styles, and something which is demonstrably new against something which is less new, I think in the fullness of time that's something which actually creates interest in communities. So that's something that I don't think that we have to shy away from. So those would be the end of my comments, unless the committee has any questions for me.
Are there any questions of Mr. Metallican at this time? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Just very quickly, there was some reference to the cedar hedge along the one side.
Yes.
I'm not seeing any access through this, so I'm assuming that hedge is to be retained?
No, we didn't put X's there because the hedge isn't technically a tree by the bylaw. Okay. But no, that hedge is on my client's property, and that hedge will have to come out to facilitate the construction of the building. Now the intention is to leave as much of it as possible. Let me point out, the hedge is very large. In fact, the hedge is actually rather overgrown. The hedge, for those who've been to the site, there is a kind of manicured hedge around the front, which is indicated here. Actually, is off the screen. It's a kind of manicured hedge, which exists around the front. That's to be retained. Once you get to the side and rear of the building, you see these larger sort of arcs here. This is that hedge, which is, as I say, rather overgrown. This part will have to be retained, or sorry, to be removed. There's no question of it, to facilitate the construction. The idea is to keep as much as possible as it goes down toward the rear yard, but there will have to be some retained, or some removed. But again, it's not shown that way because it's not technically a tree under the tree bylaw.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Metallican. Are there any further questions? I see none. If you have nothing further to add, we will take the matter into the committee.
Go ahead, Mr. Tusk.
Sorry, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patricia Drive is subject to a lot of reconstruction right now. Something that was very visible out on the site, and we have this is our second application from this road on this agenda. I'm very sensitive to the concerns of the residents. I hear they're saying, however, we are charged with reviewing applications in accordance with 4 tests of the Act, and in evaluating the application and the procedures and processes that are available, I am satisfied that this application and the 3 variances that are being requested by the applicant do conform to those 4 tests of the Act. There are adequate processes that are available to deal with tree preservation, site grading and drainage, and those types of matters, and staff has capably addressed the massing and character of the proposed dwelling. So I am satisfied and will be putting forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions. Those conditions being that the proposed dwelling be constructed in general accordance with plans dated March 19th, 2018, and the second being that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision. I would note for the record that there were numerous submissions with respect to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Charlebois, you have some comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted I am going to support this application, but because of such a lively discussion here, I just wanted to bring up a couple of points just so we're all clear. As a committee, we're looking at 3 variances. One was with respect to the size of a garage, another one was with respect to a projection of the garage, and a third one was with respect to a residential floor area. None of these particular variances impact on the discussion about the trees, although it's very important, but they don't. So in the case of this particular house that's being built within the prescribed building envelope, the coverage of the house is fine. It relates to the side yard and front yard and rear yard setbacks. And so in this particular case, that's what we're looking at when we're doing that, notwithstanding the discussion here. And the other thing I guess I wanted to say was, we're here to just look at the variances per se, and our job is not to look at building permits, because building permits will come later. So just to clarify what the applicant did say with respect to the pool was certainly a concern. I totally hear it from you guys with respect to the trees, but at this moment in time, he just showed the pool as a potential pool. That doesn't mean he can't change his mind, just so you know, in terms of when he actually applies for a building permit, he can apply for a separate building permit for the pool. And at that time, he'll have to go through a whole process that they spoke about. So we're not approving the pool. I just wanted that, I guess, to be clear. We're not approving that the pool could be there. We're not even approving that a pool can go there in any respect. We're just approving the layout of the particular building as it relates to these 3 variances here.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois, for those clarifications. Are there any further comments from the committee members? See none. Mr. Metalligen, if you have nothing further to add, we're prepared to move a motion. So who's going to move the motion?
You did.
Oh, you did. I was listening for... So the motion on the table is to approve the application with the 2 conditions that were already stipulated, that the proposed well be constructed in general accordance with the plans dated March 19th of 2018, and our standard 2-year condition that will expire within 2 years if a development has not proceeded and/or building permit not issued. Is there any further discussion? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So,
the last application of the night is CAV 018 of 2018, deferred from March 13th of 2018 at 1065 Scott Avenue.
Good evening again, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. Joris Kieran, Kieran Design Inc., 100 Bronte Road, Unit 10, agent for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. Is there anyone here for application CAV 018 of 2018 at 1065 Scott Avenue? Okay, I see none. The floor is yours. We do have one letter of support that was submitted, and town staff is in full support of your application. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? Any clarification? See none. Mr. Kieran, do you have anything further to add, or we can take this matter into committee?
No, go ahead, yes.
Okay, thank you. Who would like to move a motion? Mr. Tulowski, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to preface the motion with a couple of comments. The room's kind of clear, so maybe some future applicants are watching this from home, but I just wanted to, I guess, congratulate Mr. Kieran on both his applications tonight. I find you've done an excellent job of taking a larger house and a larger footprint request and designing it in such a way that you haven't maximized the setbacks. You've made the second floor smaller. You've incorporated parts of it into the roof. So you've basically taken the excess coverage and area and brought it into the center of the dwelling, and where I think the variances on both your applications result in no impact whatsoever by the variance that's being requested. And I think a lot of applicants could learn from these two that you presented here tonight. So having said that, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I guess I should move a motion to approve the application. Find that it meets the forecast of the Planning Act. Make that approval subject to two conditions: that development please go in accordance with the drawings submitted, and that a permit issue within 2 years.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Tulowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have minutes to approve for March 13th of 2018 and March 27th of 2018. That was my opinion, actually. Okay, Mr. Hardcastle has moved the minutes. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Mr. Charlebois, motion to adjourn.
Sorry, who did the minutes for March 13th?
Mr. Hardcastle, both of them.
Oh, who did both? Okay.
And adjournment is Mr. Hardcastle, Mr. Charlebois.
Okay.